Good evening. My name is Lynn Gray, and I represent District 7, Hillsborough County Public School Board. And we are very, very excited, but definitely have looks of concern. Tonight, our panel of experts, whom I will introduce shortly, will be sharing their expertise on the nefarious acts of exploitation of our students and other children not engaged in school necessarily, and young adults, for financial gain. And many parents will probably associate trafficking perhaps with the use of the cell phone and how gradual grooming is done, whereby students can get to know this person by way of social media, and then eventually develop a relationship, and then eventually, of course, meeting somewhere and becoming a part of the human trafficking, let's just say one of the numbers, and there's many. We are the #1 metropolitan city in the nation for human trafficking. We are the 7th largest school district in the nation. And for us to neglect an awareness campaign of these nefarious acts to our children, in my mind, and every one of these experts, would not be very well received. So we want to make sure that we bring an impact to everyone on the audience that is on Facebook Live and otherwise. But we also want to say that we have a lot of support teams out in our foyer. And if they're not there, we have them at our school. And when I say support teams, if a child sees a video, and they'll be shown 21 of them beginning February 23rd in their social studies class, excuse me. If a child sees the video and it triggers an awareness, and they say, oh, this has been done to me before on my cell phone, then they may also want to ask a question, or they might be very concerned that it's happening right in their neighborhood, and they'll go to their guidance counselor. And I'm using the guidance counselor very freely, but in a real useful way, because attached to the guidance counselor, we have social workers, school psychologists, we have our resource officer, but all of them will be there to support our students should they make a connection. And our panelists today will absolutely share that there probably will be those connections. We are very thankful that our Superintendent Davis, has given us a welcome and a shout out, and we're going to see his video. And then we're going to introduce our panelists. And following that, they're going to answer some questions that we know that many of our parents and grandparents may have. And at this time, Pablo, would you go ahead and introduce Superintendent Davis? By the way, he couldn't make it tonight because we had 2 boundary meetings tonight. And in all fairness, this is another initiative we have to take care of as well. But at any rate.
Good evening, and thank you for attending this important discussion about human trafficking and specifically online safety for our students. I'm Madison Davis, Superintendent of Hillsborough County Public Schools, and I apologize for not being able to attend this important event this evening. Tonight you will hear from law enforcement and experts in the field about how to recognize the signs of human trafficking and what to do if you suspect it. You will hear powerful stories from survivors who have turned their nightmare into a learning opportunity for everyone. Their stories could save someone you love from becoming the next human trafficking victim. Also, this evening, you'll be given resources on how to best protect students from predators who lurk online. Even our youngest learners are becoming wonderfully proficient with the newest technology, but with these proficiencies, they're engaged in a whole new world of dangers. Tonight, we'll learn how to best provide safeguards to our children as they continue to interact online every day. I want to thank all of our community partners involved in this evening's discussion. It is so important. It takes all of us to work collectively to keep our children safe every day. I'd also like to give a special thank you to Board Member Lynn Gray, who's made it her mission to arm our families with the best information possible about this very important initiative. Thank you again. I look forward to taking part in our future discussions.
And I'll just say outwardly, thank you, Addison Davis, who is now at King High School. I want to also thank our translators, which will be Melissa Mogado and Drusi. We're going to have Arabic and Spanish also translated throughout. I want to also thank our vendors who are out in the hallway and will be there right after the Q&A. Eric Bowles, law firm. Paving the Way Foundation, Jan Edwards. Jan, go ahead and raise your hand because you're right there. No More Foundation, Dottie Groover Skipper. Reach Up, Neil and Kayla Foundation. Victims to Survivors of Voices, Florida. And that is Connie Rose. She'll be speaking. Radiant Hands, thank you so much for coming. Hillsborough County Sheriff Office and Hillsborough County PTSA, and that is Amy Granger. And Amy, where are you? There she is, along with Ellen Lyons. Ellen, raise your hand. We want to take a special thanks to the Hillsborough County PTA. They do have a, let's just say, a scale of almost 38,000 families, and we did this 2 years ago, and we can tell you right now it was powerful. And here we are today, and not in a cheerful way, but in an informative way. So at this time, if I can have each of the panelists introduce themselves and what area of expertise. And I'll start with Principal Savino.
My name is Denise Savino, and I'm the principal of Leonard High School. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I just turned it on for you.
You got to push the red button. Sorry about that.
My name is Dottie Groover Skipper, and I'm the Anti-Trafficking Director for the No More Foundation, which the No More Foundation has been in the trenches with in foster care and with human trafficking for over 10 years, connecting the community and people to care in those two main areas. We are absolutely delighted to be a part of this, and for the last 2 years we have helped to train the school district, training over 50,000 individuals in the school district alone on human trafficking. So we are just thrilled to continue to be a part.
Good evening. My name is Jan Edwards, and I'm the president of Paving the Way Foundation. And who we are is a fierce disruption in the cycle of child trafficking. And we do that through educational programs. We really work specifically with young people, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and we've developed a program for 4th and 5th grade because the average age that these online predators are targeting our kids is 10 to 13. It's 5th grade. So we need to get talking to them as soon as we possibly can. And I'm all the way from Orlando. So I'm thrilled and honored that you invited me to come along and walk alongside this entire group of human beings, but really the entire task force to make sure that our kids are prepared and they know exactly what to do to prevent themselves or their friends from being exploited.
Hi, I'm Connie Rose, and I wear a few different hats. It is on.
You're good.
Thank you. And I wear a couple of different hats. So first, I do want to say I grew up in Tampa. I am a survivor, and I was actually trafficked out of one of our high schools. And so I wanted to open up with that because, you see, that's what led me to start my own nonprofit, which is Victim to Survivors. We are a survivor-led organization. We mentor adult survivors. Primarily, we work with women. We also work with survivor leaders. We are that bridge that fills the gap. The other capacity that I have, I am co-president of Voices for Florida. We are the Open Doors Outreach Network. We are in 33 counties throughout the state of Florida. Right here in the Tampa Bay area is More to Life, is one of our service providers. We are a 24/7, 365-day-a-week program so that our youth, 10 to 24 years old, have case management, have direct services. We are also the largest employer of survivors in the state of Florida. So I'm so grateful that we are doing this, that the school board has really taken on this mission, because I can say firsthand, I know what it's like to be in high school and have to keep the secret. So thank you.
Yes, and again, my name is Lynn Gray, School Board, District 7, and I am the captain of the ship, so to speak, of our Human Trafficking Committee, which comprise of every one of these wonderful individuals, and a lot more than that. And through their work of 4 years, we are now getting consistently more organized and having awareness panels. And I thank each and every one of you.
Hi, I'm Judge Robert Bowman. I'm the judge that oversees the Juvenile Crossover Division. My division covers everything that kids can get into or not get into, such as attending school, unfortunately. So I cover truancy, dependency, delinquency, mental health, sex crimes, sexting, everything. And then because of the, I guess, overwhelming attendance of children that were victims of HT that were coming through our courtroom, I started a court call for human trafficking juvenile victims called Option Court, which stands for offering potentially trafficked victims opportunities now. So we give them an opportunity or an option to try to accept services, which we may talk about later. Is not easy, especially when our children don't identify as victims. So they for a lot of different reasons will not accept help. But I want to thank you for letting me to attend tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Corporal Lindeman with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. I'm one of the supervisors with the Human Trafficking section, and thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Major Chris Rule. I'm with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. I'm basically the division commander for the Special Investigations Division, which oversees the Human Trafficking Unit. And on behalf of Chad Chronister and Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, thank you, Ms. Gray, for allowing us to be a part of this board.
Thank you so much. At this time, if there are any questions from the audience, we will have an individual who will pick up the question and put it right here so I can get our experts to address it. Ms. Savino, can you share the name of the young boy from Jefferson?
Eduardo, can you stand up?
Eduardo. Let's give him a big hand. So if you have any questions, that's who to give it to. So at any rate, we're going to get started. These are some questions that are common questions, but important to be answered. This goes to Major Rule and to Dottie Groover Skipper. What is human trafficking versus human smuggling? And Major Rule?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I know, and I'll let Ashley touch on it a little bit, but human trafficking, obviously, it's a problem in the county. We recognize it. The sheriff recognizes it. And, with a dedicated, I believe we're the only dedicated agency here in the state of Florida. Matter of fact, even in the southeast of Florida, that has 10 detectives and 2 supervisors that actually go out and combat human trafficking. So we take the proactive approach, but we also take the victim approach. I haven't seen a lot of human smuggling. I know recently Corporal Linderman and her group just saved 8 females from Cuba that were trafficked from Cuba, and we ended up getting a tip from them over in Pinellas County, ended up making contact with them and their traffickers, and put both their traffickers away for hopefully a long time here.
Wow. Yep. Corporate?
And just to add to that, with the human smuggling, obviously they have a voluntary component to it. In those cases, they are brought to this country through coyotes and with the hopes of a better life. In our human trafficking in itself is the exploitation of these individuals with the encompass of force, fraud, and coercion to distinguish between the two different crimes that we're seeing.
Thank you. Dottie?
Yeah, I'll just add to that human smuggling, it always involves transportation, like a crossing or, some kind of transportation, and human trafficking does not have to involve movement at all. So, and y'all explained it really well. I have my own short definition of what human trafficking actually is. It is the exploitation of vulnerabilities for another person's gain. So, and that's what traffickers do, is they exploit vulnerabilities for their own gain. So that's my informal definition of human trafficking.
And we are reminded that Dottie Groover Skipper has dealt in this nefarious act, for lack of better words, for many, many years. So you are very much an authority. We have the
Can I just?
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
just going to add one more piece from our friend Sue Ebbelholson that works for DCF. The distinction she helped me with is human smuggling is a crime against a country, and human trafficking is a crime against a person, right? And they can be, there can be smuggling and trafficking. Right? So the coyotes can come across and it's like, oh, by the way, it cost me an extra $5,000 to get here. So now you have to fill in the blank to earn that back. So it almost becomes indentured servitude. And that's where you'll see the restaurants, the maintenance, the construction workers, housekeeping, that's where you'll see a lot of, in what I was, invite people to look at. If you're going to a hotel, I always look at my housekeepers right in the eyeball and I'm like, how are you today? And I look to see what reaction is back. And then I can either go down and talk to the manager on duty or wish them a great day. But it's like looking people in the eyeballs wherever you are to see, are they okay? Or are they not? And that's probably the biggest thing we can do as community leaders is go out and be with people.
Thank you, Jan. Next question. What are the types of human trafficking? And I know I mentioned online, and we got our kids very well trained on the online when we had COVID. They are masters and very savvy with those social media sites. So with that in mind, what are the types of human trafficking? Connie?
There are so many. Oh, sorry about that. There are so many different types, and Jan actually alluded to a few of them, and so did Board Member Gregg. So social media, all social media networking sites, primary target for our youth. We have domestic servitude, we have labor trafficking, we have labor trafficking in the strip clubs, right? People forget the labor trafficking does happen in strip clubs. It's a cross-section with sex trafficking. Domestic servitude, believe it or not, domestic violence, right? There's an intersection with domestic violence, and then we have our classic that we call sex trafficking, just to name a few.
Thank you. Judge Bowman?
If you want a resource, and I think part of this panel is educating our community, but a resource in terms of the types of human trafficking, a very good resource is the typology of human trafficking, which identifies 25 different types of trafficking. You can Google it on the internet. It's by the Polaris Project, Polaris. And that identifies each different type of human trafficking, but more so, it provides detail as to the ages, the specific items that are involved in the trafficking, the areas in which the victims are lured or most popular. I can tell you that in the time that we've had our court, and since I've been in the crossover division, we've identified several of those types. You can break down in a more general type. You have sex trafficking, you have labor trafficking, but there's also organ trafficking, which in one of our countries in the world, that's the #1 type of trafficking they have to deal with throughout their population. So if you need a reference, go to the Polaris Project. I think it's a 2017 article, and it's called The Typology of Modern Slavery, and it breaks down all the different types, and it's very informative.
Well, thank you very much. And this is about education, which primarily is why we're here, and we're hoping also that parents will learn a lot tonight. Thank you, Judge Bowman. Next question. What are some of the things that make our kids most vulnerable? And that goes to Jan and Connie. Jan Edwards?
Sure. So just to give you some context, we've educated almost 25,000 young people in the past 6 years. So I have a lot of face time with our kids. And, we actually ask them, like, so what's a vulnerability? What do you think that means to you? And they kind of work it out, and then we'll be like, well, what are things that make you vulnerable? So I'd ask the audience to start thinking about things that would have you be vulnerable, because human trafficking can affect anyone. Predators have a tendency to focus on our kids because their prefrontal cortex isn't quite fully developed yet. So, they make snap decisions based on a feeling and not really thinking about long-term implications. So poverty, lack of attention at home is the number one thing that kids talk about of what makes them vulnerable. We all want to be loved. We all want to belong, and we all want to feel connection. And our kids, especially, the last 3 years have caused some havoc on our kids. Us too. But we're grown-ups. We're supposed to know how to deal with it, right? Air quotes. Our kids aren't really trained. And so they're going out seeking connection. And where they went was right here. Mm-hmm. So loneliness. Also to the experience of really not belonging at school. You'll see a lot of kids, they're in choir, they're in dance, they're in theater, they're in sports, and then you've got a group of kids that really, either whether they have to ride the bus home because they have no transportation to get anywhere else, or there's nothing there interesting. Maybe they like art, but the art classes are full, or whatever that is. You've got kids that want to express themselves, and there's nowhere else for them to do that. They can do it on here. And they can do it on here for free, and it's right there with them. So those are just a handful of the things that make kids vulnerable. Denise, I know you work with kids on a daily basis, so what are some other things that you've seen?
I do, and the most important thing is for our students to get connected to school. So if you are a parent and you notice that your child comes home from school, just goes in their room, is on their phone, those are the signs that you need to be watching what they are looking at on their phone. When we have students engaged in athletic activities or extracurricular activities, they're coached, they're sponsored, they're supervised. But we are focusing now on those students that haven't made an initial connection to schools, and we're trying to get to those students so that they know we care about them just as much as any other student on our campus. We know our kids, and we know the signs, and so if we have parents that are also, when the students aren't on our campus, doing the monitoring and talking to their kids to see what's going on, then we have a better shot of catching this.
And we're so very fortunate to have a principal who's very involved with human trafficking and the online. We're going to hear more from Principal Savino, who leads Leonard High School. Thank you. Ms. Rose?
Yes, and thank you. And so some of the other things, so Jan alluded to the cell phone, right? The cell phone has become the babysitter for our children. Our children feel invisible. So families, please find a way to have family time. At dinner, whether it's at home, whether you're going out, whatever it is, in the car, right? Find ways to connect with your children. One of the other things that create a vulnerability is because our children do feel invisible. And who do they feel invisible the most by? Unfortunately, you, the parents. And again, why? We talked a little bit about COVID and what has happened over the last 3 years. It changed our entire dynamics about how we interact with each other, just in our family units, and then as we go out into school, into other areas, into the community. One of the things that I really like to touch base on, because it is part of my story, is that please teach your children about their body and the actual names for their body parts, because here's a vulnerability that is created. My father actually said, thank all the parents, because he was my perpetrator, he was my trafficker, thank all the parents that gave cute names of the body parts for their children and did not teach them the right name, because I came in, I used the scientific name, and they were then my victim.
Thank you, Connie. And also, we're reminded that when we can, to give solutions or some ideas for our parents to really utilize as a result of this panel. So I thank you for that as well.
Could I add a little bit to that? Some great resources that we always recommend is there's a website called My Body Safety Box, and it's for littler children that you can have a great conversation, age appropriate with them, utilizing that material on that website. Also, there are some great books, Good Touch, Bad Touch, that are wonderful resources to begin to have conversations with your students. One example might be to teach your children that don't allow anyone to touch you where your bathing suit, where the parts that your bathing suit covers. So that's a great, perfect example of how you can begin having these conversations with your children.
And what a very good analogy to share. I also have a question from the audience. Principal Savino, Denise, we have a lot of trepidation when we talk about this awareness campaign. You know, kind of like a little shaky because it's a coveted subject in a way, and parents say, well, it won't happen to my child, or this is more important than this subject area. So there's a lot of, I'm not going to say pushback, because State Attorney Ashley Moody is very much a prolific leader of human trafficking awareness, but still, many parents are not. So we're doing the gentle conversation, so to speak, but it is very powerful. Now, Principal Savino is very involved, and one of the things I wanted to tie into, and this came from the audience, do students drop out of school before they are trafficked? No, excuse me, I'm sorry, here it is. I am on the PTA board for an elementary school. We want to host a parent workshop on this subject. Our principal is very hesitant. What advice can you give to try to persuade that principal?
So I think the premise of being a principal is to educate students, right? That's our goal. And regardless of the topic, if there is a need or a request by any parent in our community, we would address that. If a parent brought a concern to a principal and they felt that there is talk out in the community that this is what their school needs to do, I don't think that's going to be a hard sell, because Hillsborough County does a really good job of hiring principals because we care about kids and their safety. So as a PTA president, bringing that to the attention of the principal would be so welcomed, because the number one job of a principal is to keep their kids safe. Have that conversation. And you can drop my name and have them call me, because we have the audience. They're with us longer than they're with their parents sometimes. They're with us all day. So we have every reason to welcome having that community input and doing what the parents are asking us to do.
Thank you.
If I may. So I'm going to give you 3 numbers to take back to your principal. All y'all get ready to write some stuff down. By the way, this is how we talk to our kids. I'm like, okay, get ready. So I'm going to give you 3 numbers, 10, 17, and 32. Okay? 10. 10 is the average age. 10 to 13 is the average age that online predators target our kids. I was in a 5th grade class, and we were having this very conversation. This little girl raised her hand. She goes, Miss Jan, can I share something? I said, of course. She said, you know, ever since I turned 10, she goes, I keep getting all these DMs from people I don't know. Direct messages, by the way. And I go, well, what do you do? She goes, well, I mostly delete and block them. She goes, but they keep coming back. Like, you could hear the frustration in her voice. And I go, okay. And I said, sweetheart, have you talked to your mom about this? What do you think she said? Nope. She hasn't. So we've got our 10-year-old battling middle-aged predators online alone. That right there should have your principal be like, what do I need to do? Okay. Second number, 17. It takes less than 17 minutes for a stranger to groom and entice a child to send an inappropriate picture. So by the time you order DoorDash, 2 kids have sent inappropriate pictures and had themselves be vulnerable to sextortion. And the last number, by the way, all of this is cited, you can look it all up. 32. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, just came out with their 2022 numbers. There were 32 million reports of child sexual abuse material last year. In 2019, it was 16 million. So in 3 years, it's been doubled. That alone, right there, give your principal those three numbers, 10, 17, 32. Our kids are under attack, and they need us. They're literally screaming into the void. I have a very good friend who's a survivor warrior. She has a TikTok channel. She's got 1.4 million viewers, and she says, I get DMs all the time from parents and kids going, this is happening to me. I don't know what to do as a child. And then parents, my daughter's being groomed. I don't know what to do. So our community is screaming for this knowledge and this information. And you've got experts not only up here, out in the audience, you've got survivor leaders, you've got young people that know exactly what they're dealing with, that they want to be a part of this. So invite them into the conversation and have them stand with you to have this dialogue.
Thank you, Jan. And to that question, or to that answer, what is a major rule, in Colonel Lindman? What are we doing as in the law enforcement area when you hear this, or as you have heard these statistics?
Yes, ma'am. I think for us, it's education. Education to the deputies that are in the school, the middle schools, the high school, to know what to look for when a kid is in the corner by themselves, or they're making a certain facial feature. It's about getting education out to our deputies. It's about being proactive, too. Once again, if you look in the news or watching the news, I think we had over 300 arrests for these adult males that are targeting women in the industry, in the massage parlors, in the strip clubs. For their children, we have a dedicated unit in our criminal investigations division that is constantly in that gray area, in that dark web, if you want to call it, which is very, very hard to combat. But you know, the sheriff, Chad Cronster, makes it a point to be proactive against these villains, if you want to so call them.
Thank you. Colonel Lindman?
We're taking it one step further with these operations and focusing on what we can do more of, essentially with our children these days. I personally, Miss Edwards, you struck home for me because 10 is the magic number. And it's not just professionally we see this, but also from a standpoint, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, there's someone that you can educate on a day-to-day basis and provide information or an outlet. And me personally, doing this job, we've seen that day in and day out. It's about education, and that's why we're all here tonight. So that's wonderful.
You know, there's red flag indicators that, and again, we're talking education to our parents. And I would like to ask, starting out with Denise and any of you who would like to respond, first, what is a red flag indicator, and what are the warning signs? Ms. Savino?
So at the high school level, we see kids generally act the same, right? They come to school, they go to class, they eat lunch, they are just usually hanging around with the same kids, and they are in a routine. What worries us is when we see a student who is generally upbeat, very positive, good morning, all of a sudden we don't see that behavior. So we are always concerned when we see a change in a student's behavior quickly. And by quickly, I mean it could be one day they are acting like they normally do, and then the next day they're completely different. And then we look for that pattern because we want to make sure that that student has nothing going on. But their behavior at the high school level is so normal. It's so normal. High school kids all act the same. But then when they stop acting the same is when we are all ears and eyes, and we're looking for the reason why there was a quick change in behavior.
Anything you would like to add? Connie?
Yeah, so and thank you so much. And what I'd like to add to that is also look at that change of behavior. So for instance, you have a student that was very, very outgoing and now they're not. Well, what about the opposite? Right? You can have a student that was very quiet, and now they're extremely outgoing. It is the same thing with grades. You can have a student that maybe was kind of mediocre or not doing very well, and all of a sudden they're excelling, or the reverse of that, right? So it's about a change in behavior. You know, you have to look at, do you have a student that all of a sudden is cutting classes? Never cut classes before. What's going on when they have to cut classes? I know me, what I had to do when I cut classes. And so look for change in behavior, and not all those changes in behavior are drastic. Some are very, very difficult, and a lot of them cross over. You know, I have parents say to me, and teachers say to me, you know, well, maybe there's a divorce going on in that family. Maybe there's an illness that's going on in that family. That's true. There's a lot of crossover in the signs that we look for. Then that's when you start to engage in conversation. And the first thing you do in engaging in that conversation is you create a brave space, not a safe space, but a brave space for students to come in and to be able to sit down. And if it's nothing but just to sit there and have a moment to themselves, and then you start from there at some point, what kind of questions do you ask?
Thank you. Judge Bowman, when we talk about the school sites and the growing numbers that Major Rule and Colonel Lindman are finding in our community, what are you actually seeing in the juvenile courts at this time?
So for us, one of the things that a big step was taken before I got on the bench in the Juvenile Crossover Division, that was the Safe Harbor Act, was said that no child could be charged with prostitution. Well, when the child was charged prior to the act, that child would go before the judge. There was at least an opportunity to identify that this might be a human trafficking victim. Now, with the Safe Harbor Act, a lot of times I'm never seeing that. I'm never having that opportunity to provide services. So statistically, we're looking at numbers of 20% of the victims in Hillsborough County we may come across. That means there's 80% that are out there, community kids that we never see, which is why it's so important to educate our community to be able to look out for these certain signs. But the signs that I see are a variety. For instance, in Truancy Court, of all places, we found out that a child was being labor trafficked to North Carolina. We've had a couple instances where a couple of the children from Guatemala have come through the shelter system, and immigration's dealing with them. Foster care obviously is the biggest thing because those are the most vulnerable children, and we've had children as young as 8 years old. We still have children turning 18 that are still in the life, and we're having to work with that on a daily basis. And the hardest part is because of some of the failings of our system, our foster care system, and sometimes our delinquency system, is that these victims, they don't see themselves as victims, as I indicated earlier, and for them, going back to their trafficker is a whole better way of life than just being night to night and dropped off at 11 p.m. or not getting services they need. So initially, I was seeing 2 to 4 kids a week. We started our court, but we're still seeing plenty. In 4 years, with our court, we've probably served close to 200 children. That's a huge number. And again, that's 20% of our community. So it's very scary, and it gets worse because now, like you said, 10 years old, or the target now is middle school kids who are the most vulnerable and the most susceptible to reaching out to someone. So I think it's important that you continue to help educate our community, and our community parents get educated, and we look for these signs. I mean, I don't know that I can go to the state fair anymore because you see things that you don't want to see, but like Dottie's line is, you can never not see them again. Because some of that stuff is right under our nose, and unless you know what you're looking for, you don't. And I have that in court sometimes. I mean, we've identified situations in shelter packets where a 2-year-old was sold by the parents not sold, but loaned out to a neighbor for, quote, food, and these parents were on meth and fentanyl. We don't know what happened to the 2-year-old child, but that wasn't picked up on, so we reported it. There was a 14-year-old girl that had hotel room keys and other credit cards and 3 cell phones, and part of the investigation noted it but didn't report it. This was a girl that was being trafficked. During COVID, we had multiple families trafficking their children. I mean, it tripled from our numbers because of the lack of work. And so the family had to do something to survive, and they started trafficking their children, which is scary that happens in our community.
And as we see the audience, the faces are, they're concerned faces that I'm looking at. And it's just very, very important, again, what these experts are sharing for every parent to really take note of. One of the problems, too, that we face is the high amount of absentees and dropouts of students. This comes from the audience. Do students drop out of school before they are trafficked, or do they drop out of school because they are trafficked? What's the answer? Connie?
Just because you are being trafficked does not mean you drop out of school. There are a lot of students that are being trafficked. They are still living at home. They are still going to school. They are doing everything so that the outside world thinks that their home life and what they are experiencing is normal. They try to create a normalcy, right? So the amount of our kids that drop out of school because of trafficking is very, very minute compared to the number of kids that are still in school that are being trafficked. So let's focus on our children that are in school. However, you will have students, right, because it's the blame, shame, and guilt. What did I do? It's all my fault. I made a choice, right? I made a choice to hook up with whoever I met on a social media site. I made a choice to go to that party. I made a choice to take that drink. I made a choice, I made a choice, I made a choice. Why did that child make a choice? And I know you have something to add to this, Ms. Jan.
I could talk all night, yeah. So there's a study done in the state of Texas by an organization that works with survivors, and they did a survey with survivors that had been trafficked starting as teens. 55% of these young ladies and young men were groomed and recruited in high school, at a school function, at the chemistry class, in the cafeteria, wherever that was. So, and here's just what I want to say. There's an elephant in the room. I'm just going to speak it because it's who I am. This is an uncomfortable conversation, and we get it. Like, we so get it. Most of us live this on a daily basis, so it becomes kind of like tranquilized obviousness. But for most people, nobody talks about this. It's uncomfortable. We don't want to face it, and we don't want to address it. And I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little bit verklempt. I'm with kids every day. They are facing this every day, and they are screaming into the void for us to take this on. That's why we're doing this. They don't know how to talk to you. They don't know how to talk to their teachers. They don't know how to talk to their coach. But it's up to us to create, I love that brave space, that space for them, and for us to notice the difference and be like, sweetheart, are you okay? What's going on? Just that. I have a really good friend, Teresa Flores. She's a survivor. She's like the West Coast or East Coast. She's just extraordinary. And she said her teachers knew there was something going on, but they never checked in on her. And she said, had one teacher just come up to me and gone, sweetie, are you okay? Like I sense something's off. She said it would have made all the difference in the world for me. She's like, I don't know if that would have saved me at that moment in time, but just to know that somebody was noticing me. And that's really what this conversation's about. So I invite y'all to get your brave on. And it's okay that it's uncomfortable. It really is. It should be, quite frankly. And it's okay. Because we've got someone up here that's lived that life. We've got people here that have experienced that firsthand. And I know for a fact if someone had just checked in at some point in time, it might have altered their future. I don't know. But we got to give it a shot. And for us to become comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations, because our kids are counting on us. Like, they're so counting on us. We get thank yous all the time. I'm in Title I middle schools, and to get a bunch of little boys go, bye, Miss Jan, thanks. That says something. they appreciate whatever it was we talked about. So it's just get your brave on.
I want to just piggyback real quick off of what Jan just said, and about Teresa's a really good friend of mine also. It's interesting how a lot of our story parallels. But what I want to say to you is I don't want any student, any youth out there to have to experience what I experienced. And this is what I mean. When I finally realized that I was a victim of sex trafficking, because I grew up thinking for 40 years I was a prostitute and would not tell anyone about that. At my class reunion, when people found out and they cried and they said, we knew something was wrong. When my principal was there and the dean was there and said, Connie, we knew something was going on. We didn't have the vocabulary, the words. We didn't know what to do to help you. So we are here to help you. Please let us, PTA, parents, please let us come in and have these very difficult conversations so your children don't have to experience things that you wish they never, ever will experience.
And let me just interject, that is very, very true and critical, but we also have our Hillsborough County Public School, Holly Sayed, Director of Mental Health Services, a very expansive group of professionals that have made a commitment to the children, middle school and high school, and right now we didn't do elementary school, but that's a coming. But they are also there, and they will be here after our Q&A to help. Judge Bowman?
I think we have to also remember the big picture. For example, human trafficking knows no boundaries. It's not a socioeconomic crime, or victim in terms of the victims. And I like to use, when I do presentations, I talk about Ghislaine Maxwell case, right? So what were those victims? They weren't low-income children. A lot of them were upper middle class. And who were the people that were putting the victims at risk? It was their own parents. Why? Because they said, through Maxwell, you can meet Epstein, you can get an education, you can do this and that, and they'll help you succeed. In the meantime, the grooming part was done by Maxwell, and they were going to New York, going on shopping sprees, going to, Love Island, and doing who knows what. But let's bring that down to the local level, and why it's important for parents to observe what's going on. Because just like we've talked about, we know of things where it's been a deacon, it's been a priest, it's been a reverend, it's been a teacher, it's been a coach. So you can't turn your eye once that child runs onto the field and not observe what's going on. Your role as a parent is 24/7. You need to observe those relationships just as much, because we know that there are those different types of people that will take advantage of a child, whether it's a teacher, preacher, coach, it doesn't matter. So it's not as big a scale as the Epstein-Maxwell, but it's big enough where your child can go through a grooming process and be victimized. And that's the key here, is to observe and learn, and then educate everyone else. And pay close attention to your child, because when that relationship changes and you see something happening different, think about it and talk to your child about it and take it from there. If you have to report it, report it. But we must have that awareness of what our children, what we're allowing our children to get into sometimes. We can't just always drop them off and ignore it, because there may be a predator or two out there. So I think that's really important, because there are no boundaries as to, the victims and the types of victims we see.
Thank you, Judge Bowman, and very true. Remember the middle school adage that middle school is not the time to drop the kids off and say goodbye. Middle school is the very time when you better pay attention right after you drop them off and start working maybe part-time in the cafeteria, so you know what's going on.
Could I just, a clarification, we keep using the word grooming, and I think a lot of people still believe that it's a kidnapping off the street or a kidnapping, and that's how human trafficking operates, but that can happen. But it is mostly grooming over time with someone that the child knows and they trust. many times a family member, a family trusted friend. So is that grooming over time versus kidnapping? And yes, Jan, do you want to? Jan said, what does grooming mean? Grooming means to build a relationship with a student online and other situations, and build that trust relationship between the student and the perpetrator. And once that trust is gained of the student, then, you know, maybe it's the first time that someone has ever told this student or a child that they're pretty, or that they're smart, or that they're proud of you. And maybe it's the first time that someone has ever said that to them. So that's preying on the vulnerability of that student, that child, and they build that relationship. And once that trust is there with the student, then, okay, well, if you love me or you want to continue hanging with me, I need you to go do this. So it's just a grooming over time. And I don't know if I described that, you know, as clearly as it could be, but it's more grooming than any kind of kidnapping or a snatching off the street.
Yeah, I wanted to say, too, when we get a chance a little bit later, I'd like for you to share the contents, perhaps in a small way, of the actual videos, because I think that's going to be important, especially since you authored them and we have the audience. And I want to again thank Amy Marie Granger for the avenue of Facebook Live, so parents can learn and be educated. I have another few questions for law enforcement, but Connie, I see that you want to say something.
Well, I was just going to piggyback off Dottie with grooming, because we have our language and we forget sometimes that you don't know the language we're talking about. And so the grooming process also, a lot of our youth, who wants to model? Who wants to be a singer, an actress, a musician, right? There are so many ways. I've got a perfect way for you to do that. All you have to do is just come with me, right? And it's about becoming their friends, right? And so be mindful. Look also, part of the other grooming process, all of a sudden, are they coming home with items that you cannot afford? Different kinds of clothes, shoes, different kinds of electronics, right? And even when they say to you, but you know, my friend so-and-so, I just went and borrowed from them. I hope you know who so-and-so is and whether or not that family has the money of the items that your child borrowed. So the grooming process is very, very expansive. But Dottie, thank you for bringing about kidnapping, because that's what a lot of folks believe. A lot of folks believe that trafficking happens with that white van and that you are kidnapped. That is less than 5% of what really happens, right? And that's including, unfortunately, our folks that are with coyotes, right? And so just be very, very mindful. The largest percentage of sex trafficking is familial trafficking. That is a family member or a friend.
Thank you, Connie. Next question from the audience. Law enforcement, and Major Rule Colonel Lindman, law enforcement is aware of the trafficking going on in the area strip clubs. Why aren't tougher laws imposed on them, and why are they still opened?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. You know, that's something that's been brought up a couple times. I'm not here to point out any or point fingers or anything like that, but that's something that has to be looked at with the county and the county commissioners. But, you know, we abide by Florida state statutes, and we'll rest to the fully that we can on Florida state statutes. But just going back and speaking about, you know, we can educate until we're blue in the face. But, you know, I don't like to get too personal, but as a father, as a 15-year-old, I'm in this phone every day on her phone. Mm-hmm. And she's 15 years old, but it's about knowing what's going on in your kid's life, and it's about being a good parent, because, you know, all of us up here, I'm old like everyone, but, you know, I didn't have cell phones. It was more word of mouth, and so I think it's knowing what your children are doing, finding out, going to the parent-teacher conferences at the school, as well as education. So, yeah, that's a good question. Ms. Gray, that it would have to be with the county. We have to look at and talk to the county commissioners on that. But we will enforce Florida state statutes and the county ordinances if they're staying up too late or if they're serving beer or whatnot.
Ms. Gray, could I?
Thank you.
Stab
yes,
at
Dottie.
this? I have another organization. For the last 17 years, we've been going into the strip clubs in Tampa Bay, and there is trafficking going on in the strip clubs. It is a grooming ground for perpetrators to train the women how to do what the perpetrator wants them to do. And we hear so many horrendous stories. The majority of the women in the strip clubs are not there because they want to be. Many of them are under pimp control. So it is important. You know, I actually just did start conversation again with a couple of our county commissioners. You know, what can we do? They are legitimate businesses. It's what goes on inside. I would think the owners probably are aware of a lot of things that are going on inside the clubs, but it is important to really address that again and see what we can do. So, Major Rule, I might be talking to you soon.
Yeah. Just one more point, and on the strip clubs, and without going into too much of our covert ops, but we, on a weekly and daily basis, we are in the strip clubs. We did shut down, you know, you guys are aware of it, but the massage parlors out there too are a big problem for us. It's like a brothel in there. We're daily in the spas. They do have their license that they get from the county that shows that they're a certified massage parlor. But I think here just recently, it was last year, we arrested, I believe, 10 individuals for not really human trafficking, but I forget what the case was. Do you remember, Ashley?
That would have been Operation Shared Hope.
Shared Hope, yeah. So we worked with our community partners on that as well, and seized a lot of assets from the massage parlor owners as well. And a lot of these women were over here from Asia. You know, they come in from New York, and then they're put down here in the massage parlors to work, and to be in the massage parlor and the sex trade. So yeah, we're constantly combating it.
I'll just add to that a little bit too. I know we're kind of getting off topic a little bit, but I'm appointed by the governor to the Florida Board of Massage Therapy, where we have hearings all the time with many cases of human trafficking come before us. Most of them are from the illicit massage industries, the Asian massage establishments, where women are promised, you know, a good job when they come over from Asia. They go to New York or out west, and then they're farmed out all over the country into prostitution, which they never, in their wildest dreams, thought that would happen. So it is running rampant right here in Tampa.
Let's switch a little bit around to the online. And I say this because we entitled the human trafficking for another acronym, SOS, Student Online Safety, and there's a reason for that, and each of you have mentioned it. So with that in mind, what are our kids, and thank you, Major Rules, for sharing that you're 15-year-olds. You keep track of the phone, because I can tell you my son does the same thing in every capacity, and they're in elementary school. But what are our kids dealing with today online? I mean, I'm scared to even know the full-fledged, but our parents would probably be better off knowing. Yeah. So any of you who would like to share?
Yeah. Well, the example I shared earlier, right, 5th grade. I was in a Boys and Girls Club over the summer, and we were talking about all of the apps, and if there is a chat feature on that app or that video game, there are predators in that space. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Don't mean to scare that, you know what, out of you. It's reality. And every time I ask the question, I'm like, okay, how many, especially because I work with the boys and my other team works with the girls because we split them up so we can have some very specific conversations. And I'm like, all right, how many of you are video gamers? And they almost all raise their hand. I'm like, okay, great. How many of you know that you're playing video games with or have been DM'd by someone you don't know? Every hand goes up. They are playing video games with people they don't know. And look, I don't understand it. My fingers don't work like theirs do with those gaming consoles. They just don't. But I would sit and I would watch my daughter play video games. And I would get involved and I'd cheer her on when she would, you know, kill the bad guy or, you know, swoop in with her dragon and pick up the egg or whatever game she was playing, right? But I was sat right there and I could hear her dialogue because they've got the headset, especially with Xbox Live. They got the headset. They can talk to anybody. You know, so be with your kids. And I'll never forget one night my daughter was upstairs and I was hearing, she's a really good video gamer, by the way. And I would hear her and she'd be like, yes, I'm a girl. No, you can't talk to me that way. You're out of the game, and would toss them out of the game because she was the game lead. So it's the inappropriate conversation, and sometimes it's immediate. There's a really great little video y'all can watch. It's bark.us. It's on YouTube. It's a very short video, less than 10 minutes, where somebody goes undercover. And literally, they create 2 fake profiles, one at 15 and one at 11. Watch it during the day. Don't watch it alone. Because you will have what they're dealing with online. They get body part pictures and texts every single day from people they don't know. Every day. And they know because they don't know them, they delete them. But what if, right? What if you accidentally see that? And if you've got a 10-year-old and they're playing a video game and some guy's trying to say, hey, just send me a picture of your, just take your shirt off, send me a picture and I'll help you level up. I was at a church and I shared that exact story and 2 young boys came up to their youth pastor and said, that just happened to us last week. Send me a picture of your feet, send me a picture of your knees, send me a picture of they start off very simple and what seems in a child's mind benign. You want a picture of my feet and you're going to send $10 to my Cash App? Okay. Right? In their mind, okay, they get $10, having no idea what this is being alluding to, which is the grooming. And it's the same thing on, so just so you know, there are lawsuits against Twitter, Omegle, Roblox, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, because parents are suing these big tech companies for what they're allowing on their platform. They're allowing child sexual abuse material. We're actually working on legislation at the federal level to change from child pornography, because pornography denotes consent. No child can consent to that. So we're trying to change the languaging to child sexual abuse material. And that's what they're dealing with. We've made it so normalized for our kids to take nude pictures. I'm just going to say it. And everyone's doing it, so I should too. What they don't know, I'll let law enforcement talk about this, there's actually a Florida State statute about that. So that's what they're dealing with on the daily. And having the conversation with them. Really easy way. So let's say Connie's my daughter, and I'm like, hey, Connie, gosh, you know what? I was on my Instagram page today, and I got the weirdest DM from this guy, and I didn't know what to do. Has that ever happened to you?
So, yeah.
And so it's like that question can start the conversation.
I'd like to go ahead. Thank you, Jan, Denise, and then Connie.
So I think students are on their phones 24/7, right? So now they've become immune to anything that comes in. And that's what we're seeing in high school. So they can't decipher if it's someone they know, if it's someone they don't know. They know their closest friends, but hey, that person might be friends with this person. I clicked on this, so now maybe they are responding to my friend. There's so much interactions on phones right now that they are caught up in it. And if you ever watch a high school kid, don't take a phone away from a high school student, okay? Because that's their world. So they've become immune to a lot of that screening piece. Like, hey, I don't know this person, so I'm not going to talk to them, or I'm not going to respond. The way we look at phones, and if we don't know the number, right? So, oh, that's a scam, I'm not answering it. Our kids don't have that. They don't have that filter. So they're going to respond just because they feel good about it. Somebody wants to talk to me, so they'll respond. And it's more important for us to educate them in our buildings, because we are hoping things like this that we're doing will educate parents, but we have to educate them in our schools, because we have to stop that. We have to interject and be that barrier between what's out there trying to lure them and try to groom them before it happens. As long as kids have phones, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. And if we don't educate our students, then we're missing it. We're missing the opportunity. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. I have 2,400 kids in my building, and I have 2,400 of them have parents. So I feel morally obligated to be on this committee. And I've sat on this committee for 4 years because we have got to change this. And as long as our kids have phones, we're in trouble. So we've got to fix it. And we need parents to step up and know what their kids are doing on their phones. I know I can walk into any classroom and I'll say, put your phone away. Wait a minute, miss. Wait a minute, miss. And they got to finish a conversation. I'm like, no, put it away. Put it away. Because for all I know, right, something's going on. That shouldn't be going on. And it's not their parents, because the parents shouldn't be texting their kids during the school day, right? And every single other kid is in a school building. So why are they on their phone, right? So it makes you wonder who's got our kids' attention between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're going to see your girlfriend in 48 minutes, kid. Put your phone down, right? But who has their attention that it's so important that they're talking to somebody when the rest of Hillsborough County Public Schools are in school? Our students are in school. That's where my concern is. They're not talking to their friends because their friends are right next to them. They're talking to people that shouldn't be texting kids between the school hours.
Thank
what they're
you.
dealing
Thank you, Denise. And this question also goes directly to Major Rule. What are your thoughts on that? And then Connie, make a remark. We're closing in on the time that the audience will go to the support table, so I'm trying to get some of these panel questions answered. Major Rule, online.
Yeah, that's a problem. There's so many sites out there. There's so many chat, just like Ms. Savano said. It's hard to keep up with the new sites that are popping up on a daily basis. We just learned of a new one the other day that I hadn't even heard of, that our squad hadn't even heard of. But there are covert ops going on in those chat operations. We do have undercovers in those dark web areas, if you want to call them. I can't think of them all off the top of my head, but we all have UC detectives in there monitoring those on a daily basis. Ashley, do you want to add on that?
At the end of the day, ultimately, these proactive operations, our detectives are very experienced in what they do with the internet crimes against children. And for our detectives to take on the persona as a 14, 15-year-old, it really speaks volumes when they're contacted by adults, grown men, women, soliciting for sexual acts, for various things. And it just takes you back as a human being at the end of the day. Forget the badge, forget everything. As a human, you have an adult soliciting a minor via these sites, dating applications, social media. So I just give props to our detectives and our deputies that day in and day out are conducting these investigations so there aren't real victims in these cases, and we're tackling this and going after the predators that are targeting our children. So I give them props, and it's very impressive to see what we've done so far and the battle that we're facing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It is a huge battle. I just want to remind the audience, too, that we have family and community engagement also that will take a lot of this information and share it to the communities. I want to thank Angela Fullwood, who represents FACE, because here we are trying to educate, and I can't help but think that's a very good conduit, Angela, to share this information. Connie, you wanted to make a remark, and then we're going to go into conversation about the immigrants. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to piggyback about cell phones, all right? I know we're on this conversation. You take your child's cell phone away does not mean that they're not going to have access to a cell phone. So teach your children cell phone etiquette. Here's what I mean by that. I know some parents that took their kids' cell phone away because they were watching pornography. They thought, aha, they're not going to watch it anymore. What do you think they did when they went to school? All they did was look at, can I borrow your phone? And they're still watching pornography. So again, teach cell phone etiquette, right? Really teach them and go in, right? Check your kids' phones. Know that they have more than one password. Mm-hmm. Some of our kids have more than one account, social media account. So be mindful.
I have 2 things to add. I have two things. One, make sure your kids' social media, everything's on private. it's not on public. It's huge. And the second thing is turn off your geolocator on every single app except for Life 360 unless you have it. Because when you take a picture, it shows where you are when you post it on social media. That's how predators can find our kids.
Thank you, Jan. And we're going to cover one question from the audience, and then I want each of us to be thinking, what is one action or next step that you would like to share to our parents, to the community and parents, that they should take home, that you feel they should take home tonight? So just be thinking that one strategic area that would help our parents become more aware. But let me go ahead and pilot this next question about our immigration. We have almost 12,000 immigrants who are coming into our country very, very quickly, and I don't know how many are undocumented. But Judge Bowman, when we talk about juvenile cases, are you seeing more immigrants, and what's your remark on that?
Well, we've only seen a few more because for the most part they're coming through either ports or being transported into the county through other means. I know there was the sheriff's office, which is, you know, they're vital to what we do with our option court. But one of the things is that, for instance, there was the recent operation where there was what I believe the Cuban victims were moved to Texas, then flown into Florida. And one of the concerns was whether we would see any of those where there were in fact children victims or not. But for the immigrant situation, it's rare that we see it, probably because, you know, it's more federal than it is state for us. So you have federal agencies that get involved more often. We've only had a couple, and they were both Guatemala children. One came through shelter where there was allegedly an uncle who was the father of her child. She didn't know the man, but he was in fact the father of the child, and there was no relationship to her parents. We had another where I think the girl came in and actually ended up going to school in Pasco County and was doing great, straight A student, everything. But there was still some concern whether or not her parents had been shot and killed and she had been taken. So we never got to the bottom of that because once we did our little bit, it got out of our jurisdiction. Now what we do see is a lot of the interstate. You know, the girls from Massachusetts that were brought by the guys from New York. We got to see them for just that one little second of time where they came through detention. We were able to connect with their services in Massachusetts and get them back. And probably this is one of the things that's most important, as much as we're trying to educate, and I always think we're behind the eight ball, but there are so many states that are so far behind what we're doing. That's why our law enforcement, the task force is phenomenal. You know, the education process, doing these things to serve our community is huge. I know that we're allegedly number one in the country as a metropolitan area, and number 3 as a state in the country, but measures are being taken to educate, and I think that's huge. So going back to your question, I know I went off on a tangent, but we don't see that much because it's more of a federal agency issue. But we see plenty of the intrastate where they're coming across county lines or coming across state lines, and some of our children, our dependent children, as well as some of our delinquent children are being moved. We've had girls go to Wisconsin, Michigan, New York, Georgia, down in South Florida, and so it's a constant battle to try to locate and to try to assist and provide services for those children.
Thank you. Very important remarks. Major and Colonel, the immigrants are scared to perhaps talk to you all about their trafficking. Do you find this to be true? Or, I mean, they'll go to their guidance counselor or teacher before you all. How do you deal with that?
So in our experience, I personally would say it takes us at least 7 to 8 times with contact with a victim before they're willing to open up and tell their story. Graciously, our detectives are compassionate, experts at what they do. So if it's the first time and they're just hesitant, we encourage we're just there as far as rapport, and it seems to make a difference multiple times. But we continue to try to get that story from them and get them out of the lifestyle, essentially.
Well, we definitely thank you for that effort, because we're facing it in our schools, as you know, in droves. Any remarks before I get to that final question about the immigrants? And okay, so the final question, and then we're going to go to the support tables. Name one action or one step that people, the audience, the parents, the grandparents, can take away from tonight. And Denise, we'll start with you and just go right on down.
Okay, I have a list as a high school principal, but I'll keep it to one. I think you need to stay connected to your kids and let your kids know that nothing that they are doing is so bad that they can't tell you. Because as a parent, there's something called unconditional love. And your child has to know that. I'm going to tell you, my high school kids know that I'm going to love them no matter what. And I'm not their parent. So as your parent, as the parent, you need to let them know that nothing that they're doing is so bad that they can't tell you. And maybe they're going to talk to you.
Thank you. Daddy?
Yeah, great advice. I would say to pull out your phone right now and put the National Human Trafficking Hotline number in your phone, which is 1-888-373-7888, 1-888-373-7888, because you never know when you're going to come across a situation. And I know the school district is putting in place a protocol that they will have someone in every single school that'll be a point of contact for if a student is thought to be in that type of situation. So I think, having the hotline number when you're out in the community and see something, have the boldness and the courage to call. You could call. If you're wrong, but if you're right, you could be saving a life. And I'm going to add one more thing. I have a list too, but I'm going to make mine too. I would say get educated. I know the No More Foundation, we offer free trainings. We have state grant money where we offer free trainings online, or we can come to your place of employment and offer trainings. And it's declarenomore.com. Check out the website, sign up for trainings, and I think, that was just be a great starting point to get trained. And find out about emojis. We didn't even talk about emojis, how our students and children are talking in text messaging through emojis that mean things that we would never imagine that they mean. So educate yourself. Knowledge is power.
Okay, we're going to be brief. We have just a few more minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I notice she says brief before she gets to me.
Well, they're so full of knowledge. It's amazing. Oh, my goodness. Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to say one thing about what's happening, and then I'll give you a tip, is what I really want y'all to know. I travel across the country educating and training kids, okay? So I've been all over the country. And this is the only school district that I know of, one that has a human trafficking task force, okay? It's also the only school district that I know of in the United States. It actually has an intentional plan to roll out this information to their students. I think that's remarkable, and I sure wish more school districts would be brave and take this on, because our kids are at risk. So I just want to acknowledge you, Member Gray, and the school board chair, and Drew C. back there, who's such an integral part of this, and everyone else who's on the task force. So, okay, done. So, one thing. I know, one thing. So, your kids need to know you're human. Share a mistake you made when you were their age, how you overcame it, how you worked through it, because it gives them an environment to be like, you're not perfect, because our kids have us that we're here and they're there, they're somehow less than, right? When you share a mistake, it has them be a little bit more balanced, and they realize that they can come to you and have a conversation. My daughter and I talked about everything, because I told her every stupid thing I did, everything. Age appropriate, of course. But just letting your kids know you're human, you have feels too. There was a life before them, and you're not perfect, and you had to work through some of the challenges they did too. We might not have had these things, but we had gossipy girls, we had mean boys, we had people that called us names, we had people that were mean to us, we things that we didn't do or should have done. So just share with your kids some of the mistakes you made so they can see that it's possible to make it to adulthood even by making a mistake. Failure isn't fatal.
Oh, thank you, Jan. Connie?
So as I've traveled the country since 2008 and have trained tens of thousands of people and have worked with, I think, about 2,500 survivors since that time, here's my takeaway for you. My takeaway for you is, if you as parents have ever, and teachers, and anyone that interacts with children, if you've ever experienced anything traumatic in your life, I'm not saying for you right now to go and do years and years of counseling. Here's what I'm saying, and this is the message from all the survivors that I have worked with. 1, believe your child. But 2, when that child comes to you and says, someone looked at me in an inappropriate way and made me feel icky. Someone DM'd me and I don't know who they are. Someone touched me inappropriately. You put away whatever happened to you in your lifetime, and you believe that child, and you take action. But first, breathe. As Jan said, you're a parent. Breathe. Give yourself a moment, even if that means that you set up like I set up in my household. We had timeout for everything. This way, if it was something really bad, it wasn't so bad because I needed, as a parent, to take a break. My children needed to be able to breathe before we could continue a conversation. But believe your children.
Judge Bowman?
I think if I had to narrow it down, I suggest that you be keen in your observation. And let me kind of expand on that, because the idea is that our children are subject to all different levels of media, whether it's on their telephone, or their cell phone, whether it's on their in the music they listen to. I mean, it glorifies sex. It glorifies things such as trafficking. So I like to use this example. There's a movie that's been shown on Showtime. It's called American Honey, and I don't know if anybody has seen it, but it glorifies labor trafficking and it glorifies sex trafficking. And if you go to your guide on your phone, you flip and say it's about this girl that, her little adventure over the summer about having her first love and all that. But really it's about a young lady that runs from a dysfunctional family that falls into a group of kids that are run by a trafficker, and they're dropped off to sell magazine subscriptions, and they take advantage of different people, and the girls are dropped off to have sex with construction workers. There's no glory in that, but the film depicts it in a different manner. So that's why I say be keen in your observation, because we need to look beyond what is on the surface. What's the true message? What message is being provided through music, through social media, through television or cable or whatever you're watching, Netflix, etc.? I think it's important that our parents understand that there's a message behind what they're seeing, and it's just not on the surface, and it certainly, in that instance, isn't what the guide says it was. So, thank you, everybody.
Very important. Thank you. Colonel Linden?
One takeaway that I would have for parents, from one parent to the next, is if your child does not know this individual they're communicating with in real life, it's never a good idea for that individual to be communicating, whether it's social media or applications, without the parent's approval. And I use that in my home and also with parents when they ask me firsthand, internet safety. That's my number one go-to for that. From the law enforcement standpoint, I can personally say that we are here, we care, and we genuinely want to help. It's not all about the arrest of the highest trafficker. We genuinely want to provide resources and work with organizations so that, as I said before, to get these victims out of that lifestyle and continue to prosper in their choices. So that would be my two parent and law enforcement takeaways to the audience.
Thank you. Major Rule?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Member Gray. And I will make a promise to you that we'll continue to fight against this problem in the county, human trafficking, to combat it, to help. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue to do our ops. If you guys in the audience and online can make a promise to me, be nosy. Know what your kids are doing. Be involved. Be nosy, period.
Thank you. And to conclude, well, we want to thank our panelists with earnest, so let's give them a big hand. And a big appreciation to our Hillsborough County PTA, Amy Marie Granger and Ellen Lyons. Also, a huge thank you. We're going to visit the tables. I know that we don't have too much time. Our staff has been working since 7 o'clock this morning, and they're tired, and I know you all must be. So I want to thank Holly Saya and her wonderful team, Angela Fullwood and her FACE team, Drusy, your adult vocational education. You've been an integral part of everything that we do. Drusy, give me your whole last name. I can't remember that offhand. Drusy Diaz. Okay. Thank you. So we want to thank Eric Bowles, the law firm, for the immigration outreach. Also paving the way, which is Jan Edwards. You might as well raise your hand again. And No More Foundation, which we will have the videos starting February 23rd, 30-second videos through the social studies classes, probably two times a week.
And aren't they on the Twitter page? I know Ashley put them somewhere so people can see them visually. Do you remember?
On Twitter. So what's the Twitter handle? I don't know what the Twitter handle is.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the videos, I think they're going to be playing right after our panel, aren't they? Are they still?
Well, they were on 30 minutes before, but no, not after the panel today.
All right.
But we also have a big thank you to Reach Up. Oh, excuse me, Dottie, I forgot to thank you. No More Foundation, thank you. And Reach Up and Neil and Canella Insurance, I believe. I'll get it right soon. I didn't bring my glasses, sorry. Victims to Survivors of Voices. They're out there. Radiant Hands, Temple Terrace. Hillsborough County Sheriff Office, thank you, Chad Chronister, wherever you may be, and he's everywhere. And our Hillsborough County PTSA, very appreciative as well. I have PTSA. I'm trying to think. It must be PTA. I don't know where. It's both. Okay. I don't want to neglect. Thank you, Eduardo. And Ms. Savino, do you want to give a thank you, shout out to our wonderful Jefferson?
Of course, and this is one student who's representing thousands and thousands and thousands of kids at Hillsborough County that we're so proud of. And thank you for coming tonight and helping us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, without further discussion, we'll adjourn to the tables. I will say that we do have a firm close of 7:30, but we'll extend it for another 5 or 10 minutes because Pablo, many of our employees have, it's time for them to go home. Just saying. Okay, out we go. Thank you.
Let's talk about human trafficking. What is human trafficking really?
In very simple terms, human trafficking is the business of the exploitation of vulnerabilities. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. It involves exploiting a person through force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of forced labor and/or commercial sex. Victims of human trafficking include adults, youth, and believe it or not, even children.
Child human trafficking, or domestic minor sex trafficking, applies to persons under the age of 18. If a child is under the age of 18 and involved in commercial sexual exploitation, it's automatically human trafficking, regardless of whether force, fraud, or coercion exist. Let's say that one more time. Any child under the age of 18 is considered non-consenting to sexual activity. This means that any person under the age of 18 who is involved in the selling of sexually explicit media or sex acts is a victim of human trafficking. By the way, there is no such thing as a child prostitute because, as you now know, a child cannot consent.
1 in 4 victims of human trafficking worldwide are children, and 10,000 children are sold each day globally. Let that sink in for a moment.
Children are lured when a trafficker fills a void through charm, lies, and deception. In fact, 1 in 3 children are solicited for sex within 48 hours of running away from home. But you don't have to run away from home to be targeted by a trafficker. They are experts at assessing a person's vulnerabilities and building a false sense of security and trust in order to exploit an innocent victim. You may be asking yourself, how does this happen? 1 minute a kid is normal and happy, and the next thing they know they're being forced to provide labor or sex? It's a lot to take in.
There are many ways minors are brought into the human trafficking world. In this video series, we'll be focusing on the top 2 avenues that lead to sex trafficking, according to current research from the Polaris Project. The 2 most prominent ways are through feigned romantic relationships between a victim and a trafficker, and familial trafficking. This is when a family or trusted friends sexually exploit a child.
You may be thinking, this doesn't happen here. This issue only takes place in other parts of the world. This is not the reality in the slightest. There are over 1.5 million victims of human trafficking in the United States alone. This is happening in your city, in your county, and very possibly even in your own neighborhood. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline data in 2019, the state of Florida ranks 3rd highest in the nation in human trafficking cases. Almost 20% of only the reported cases in our state were minors. This cannot go on any longer. The cycle of children being sold for sex or forced into labor must end. How does human trafficking happen? Now, we know human trafficking is the business of the exploitation of vulnerabilities, and honestly, a true violation of human rights in general. We know that men, women, and children are being taken advantage of. But how are traffickers luring people into forced labor and/or the commercial sex industry? There's a strategy involved in this plot that we want to be sure you're aware of so you can protect yourself and others.
This strategy is acknowledged as a process called grooming. Victims of trafficking are selected for hard or soft abduction. Criminals begin the process by identifying weaknesses or vulnerabilities in their target. For example, broken family structures, those looking for love and attention, oversharing on social media, drug use, children in the foster care system, kids who identify with the LGBTQ+ community, runaways, or they're chosen for their particular height, weight, gender, or ethnicity.
In this phase, victims are often groomed through the use of drugs and psychological control to build a false sense of trust. The purpose of grooming is to manipulate the victim into becoming a cooperative participant in their own abuse or exploitation, which increases the likelihood that the victim will become attached and repeatedly return to the perpetrator. Why wouldn't victims just say no and change their situation? Often, they're promised payment that's never given, or another person's safety is threatened. The list can go on and on.
It's during this phase that the perpetrator may buy the child expensive clothes, jewelry, purses, shoes, cell phones, their favorite toys. They may take them for manicures and pedicures or out to expensive restaurants. This is an all-out attempt to build trust, to make the child feel loved, accepted, and cared for. It's this love and attention that the child does not receive anywhere else that is eventually used to keep them exploited by their captors.
What are signs to look for that may indicate someone is stuck in human trafficking? If they're avoiding eye contact and fearful, if there's signs of substance use and addiction, or physical abuse. They may have poor hygiene or be malnourished. They may also not be sure of what city or town they're in. They might have strange tattoos, like the following: initials, a crown, the word daddy or dollar signs, or the Roman numeral 16, which represents the 16th letter in the alphabet. P stands for pimp. They may not speak for themselves. Behavior changes are also important to notice. Is the individual wearing increasingly provocative clothing? Do they have a significantly older boyfriend or girlfriend? Are they suddenly more secretive and defensive? A yes to any of these questions may be cause to pay closer attention.
If you feel you know anyone who might be a human trafficking victim, then please report them to this National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can call 1-888-373-7888 or send a text to 233-733.
As stated earlier, the internet, social media, and texting are some of the top ways in which human trafficking recruitment, grooming, and entrapment take place. It's easy to be naive in realizing how the information placed on social media can be used to lure people into extremely dangerous situations and circumstances. In the year 2020, online recruitment for sex trafficking went up 22%, making it the top recruitment location for all forms of trafficking. Recruitment using Facebook and Instagram went up drastically compared to the previous year, with Facebook at a 125% and Instagram at a 95% increase in recruitment use.
Many minors overshare on these platforms without an awareness of potential consequences. Many of today's young adults, teens, and children grew up with access to a smartphone, tablet, or a personal computer from which they could access social media and the World Wide Web in general, privately or with minimal parental supervision.
The reason why oversharing on these outlets is dangerous is because it creates vulnerability. Take Instagram, for example. Although posts to the feed are usually created after an outing, story posts are often put up in the midst of an activity. It's not uncommon for someone to post a location on their story. If their account is public, then anyone can view this and have instant access to this sensitive information. Take this scenario, for example. A story post says, "Just got to International Mall. I have some time before my friends get here. Ask me some questions," with the question sticker. Danger heightens when individuals tag their location or use hashtags.
These possibilities are not exclusive to Instagram. It's possible to share private information on so many different platforms. As most of us know, many of these apps provide the opportunity for messaging, which can easily lead to sexting. Before you know it, the person you thought was trustworthy is blackmailing you with your own images. This is called sextortion. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children defines sextortion as a type of blackmail used by the offenders to acquire additional sexual content from a child, coerce them into engaging in sexual activity, or to obtain money from the child. NCMEC analyses have found that children who are victims of sextortion are often targeted and blackmailed by an individual they met online, who obtained the initial sexual images from the child through deceit, coercion, or another method.
In some cases, this looks like a blackmailer or trafficker pretending to be in a relationship with the victim, even sending photos of what looks like sexually explicit images of themselves, asking for the same in return. After they obtain the initial image, things then switch from a romantic relationship to an exploitative relationship.
Now, it's important to note that emojis, not words, are now the primary means of communicating several things to would-be sex buyers, including that a sex service is for sale, that a victim is underage, and that person being trafficked has restricted movement, indicating the buyer must travel to the victim. Peach equals buttocks, eggplant equals penis, and drops equal ejaculation. Sure, these hidden meanings may not be news to you, but they are being used as a code to exploit people. According to research, the most prominent emoji indicators of trafficking are the rose, rosette, cherry, cherry blossom, growing heart, airplane, and a crown. Simply put, they're using these symbols to buy and sell human beings, and this is not okay.
Although this information can be difficult to accept, there is hope. Having traumatic experiences doesn't stop us from living the lives that we want to live. A study from Harvard University on the resilience in children with traumatic experiences reports that every child who winds up doing well has had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult. Just one safe adult can make a real difference in your life. So who is that person for you? Is it your teacher, your coach, your parent, grandparent, or guardian? Find that person and be honest with them. When you have an adult who truly has your best interest in mind, the sky is the limit for your future.
And you, yourself, can make a difference in the lives of those in need. For additional training, resources, or to find out more about serving opportunities, sign up for our email list on our website or follow us on Instagram or Facebook.